Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Timothy Treffinger with Veterans in Politics. Today, our guest is going to be Stephanie Phillips, who is a candidate for United States Senate, representing the Republican platform. But before we get to Ms. Phillips, Tim, you have any rants?
Rants?
Yeah.
One brief one.
Money?
No money. Not this time. I was back in criminal court a few times this week, which was a nice break from the family court circuit, and I'm noticing that they're still gatekeeping the veterans court, and I think that's a problem in this county. Let the veterans apply to veterans court. If veterans court rejects them, fine, but let's stop with the district attorney's office gatekeeping for specialty court programs, especially for the people who need them, like the mental health court and the veterans court.
Well, you know, the DA's office, they like to have power and control. So if they don't have power and control, they feel like they're useless.
That's true. If only we had a different DA.
Well, you tried.
I did.
Could have been you, Tim.
I know.
You gonna try again?
Let's see what happens. Right now, we're still focusing on AG, but we never know what'll happen in the near future.
All right, very good. But I just want to let you know that this program was brought to us by Ron Quince, who's running for U.S. Congress for, I believe, District Number 1, and Stephanie Phillips running for United States Senate. And that doesn't mean we're not going to give her a hard interview. You just wait and see. Anything else, Tim?
That's all I got for right now.
All right. Ms. Phillips, tell us about yourself.
Well, I was born on the East Coast and grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in a small town in Southern Oregon, out in the country. We had to drive up a 2-mile dirt road just to get to our house. We had 4 neighbors, and it was very small. We rode a bus to school. We grew almost everything we ate. We had a huge garden, orchard. In the summertime, we would always pick vegetables and fruit. We would can all summer long with my grandmother and my mom. We made pies, and we learned the value of hard work. We worked really hard. And then when I got into junior high, we moved to the Bay Area in California. My dad got a job there. And I spent my junior high and high school years in the Bay Area, and then down to Santa Barbara for college before I came here. And I was working for a real estate developer as a part-time job while I was in college. And they had bought some land here. And I heard him and his partner talking about Las Vegas. We need to have an office there. And I said, hey, after I graduate, I'll go for 6 months and I'll run your office and I'll get your land ready to build on. And then I'll come back to California and do what I was going to do. So I came here, got into the real estate business, and I absolutely loved it. And I never left. So that was 30 years ago. And I got my license when I was 25. And I got married, had 2 kids, and started my real estate, my own company 18 years ago. And then here we come to 2020, and we have COVID hit. And all of the things that they did to us in this state, I thought was completely un-American, unconstitutional. And I see what they're doing to our kids. And now this is the seat that I'm sitting in, and I want to do something about it.
So, real estate business, tell us about that. What drives you? Why do you wake up every morning wanting to do real estate?
I love real estate. I was like a little sponge. I soaked up all this information about development, construction, all these things, selling the homes. And I got to deal with people. And I love people. That's just my nature. Every single deal is different. Every client's different. They have different backgrounds, different beliefs, and different wants and needs. And it's just something that I've enjoyed. Work to me in this business has never been work. It's something enjoyable, something I love. And it's been very flexible as being a mom. And I've been a single mom for 16 years. And having this type of a business where I can control my schedule a lot of times left me the flexibility to pick up my kids every day after school. I took them to all the practices. I went to their games. I was very involved, very hands-on. And it's just something that has worked out great. And of course, we went through the worst housing crisis in history here. So the economy and things that happen is not always great and roses and all of that, but that just teaches you to keep on going, you can't give up. And yeah, I've had tough times and I've had great times. So, but I'm still here.
You mentioned 16 years that you were single and raising your kids.
Mm-hmm.
How is that significant?
It is because, and their dad, he and I have always gotten along very well. He's a veteran.
What branch?
He's Air Force. He is a wonderful dad and he loves his kids. And we worked very well together as far as consistent rules in each of our homes. And when you have that consistency with the kids, they know what is expected of them. And my kids are extremely successful, very independent, very responsible. They're accountable. They're very smart. Both graduated with honors, both athletes. They're my greatest success. I couldn't be more proud of them. But with single moms, you are on double duty all the time. You've got all of the home responsibilities, the maintenance, all the upkeep. You've got the kids and getting them back and forth and keeping them involved in, whatever activities that they are. You are the backbone for that. And not to mention being self-employed versus collecting a paycheck every 2 weeks and relying on that employer. When you're self-employed, you don't have business unless you go get the business. So there is a level of, you got to be self-motivating and having that. Some people don't have those skills. And I've always been a hard worker, and my focus has been my kids and my business, and my personal life really has been on the back burner all these years because it's not important. What was important to me was to raise my kids so they would be successful and productive human beings in society.
What schools did your children go to?
They went to Cornerstone, which is not far from here.
Which is what?
That's on Sahara and Jones area. So they went to first grade through sixth grade.
Is that a private school?
Yes, it's a private school.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they transferred into Faith Lutheran. And both graduated from Faith Lutheran, which is an incredible school. And in my younger years, selling homes to people, I would hear people talk, and that's how I learn. I listen to people and I observe. And listening to these parents with kids talk about the public school system here, I always told myself, if I ever had kids,
that was probably going to be one of my next questions about public school system.
Yeah. I always said if I was going to have kids, I would not put them in the public school system if I could help it.
Why?
And because all of these stories that I would hear from these parents and the rate of graduation and people, drop out, we top the list in the worst of education in the country. And so I thought, okay, if I can help it and can afford it and we can give this, to me, it's a gift, and it was wonderful for my kids. And they were Christian schools. So they had that background, and I'm a Christian, and my kids grew up in church. So we were, we always went to church, and their dad did too. So they had that, and to reinforce that in the school system, to me, I think that environment is super important for kids.
What do your kids do now?
My son is 21. He goes to SUU, which is in Cedar City, Utah. And he joined the ROTC program when he started school, and he joined the Utah Army Guard. And he will graduate next year. He'll commission as an officer, and he's going to go infantry. He'd like to, pursue that and serve this country.
So you're a Blue Star mom.
I am.
Okay.
I am.
And your daughter?
My daughter is 18. She just graduated from Faith Lutheran in May, and she's going to go to UNLV. She originally was planning to go to Florida, and she changed her mind and is going to stay here her first couple of years and go to UNLV.
They always say that, well, not all the time, but most of the time they say single parents raising kids, it's harder on the kids. The kids go, drugs, or they drop out of school, or they do all kinds of craziness. How did you manage to hold that together, especially being a single parent and putting your children in private school of all, and then running your own business? How do you structure that? How do you do that?
It was teamwork between their father and I.
Where's their father?
It was in Florida.
Florida.
It was a commitment from us to our kids and to each other, that we would get along and that we would make a terrible situation. My kids were 2 and 5.
When you guys split.
Yeah. And the first year, and I'm sure, divorced parents out there, they can attest to this. The first year is so hard because we would switch on Fridays. So he would pick up the kids from school on Friday.
That's when he was living here.
Friday. That's when he was living here. Yes. Yeah. So he would pick the kids up, and then the next Friday I would, pick them up. But during that week, during his week of time, he was working on a 410, schedule. And those were long hours and long days. And I didn't want my kids sitting in before school or after school care. So he would drop them at my house. I'd get them ready for school. I'd feed them. I would get them to school. I'd pick them up from school. So I saw my kids pretty every day, except for his weekend. And it worked out well that way. I was very involved. But you really have to, it's your priorities. And if your priority is your kid, then also the money that it costs to put them in a private school, that's also a financial priority. And to get through, the job of a single mom, it's never done. You don't get to be sick. You don't get time off. You don't get to, go gallivant for the weekend. I, never had a girls' weekend that I just took off.
Really? So
yeah.
You're a workaholic then?
No, I am. That is my life. My commitment was to raise my kids and to be a mom. And it was so important that, my personal life gets set aside. But I would do that a million times over and sacrifice that for my kids. I would sacrifice anything for my kids.
What would you tell, and I'm sure Mr. Treffinger could relate because he deals with family court stuff. What would you tell these parents that are going through these divorce situations currently right now? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, and I've told many people this, because people, when my ex and I first got divorced, people didn't even know we were divorced for years. Years. Some people would come to me at school and they had just found out.
So they don't come over your house.
This would be like 3 years later.
Okay.
This would be, parents dropping kids off at school and people I'd see every day. They didn't know because we continued on as seamlessly as possible for our kids. Mm-hmm. So people didn't see a change in that. They saw us still doing the same things and us at same functions for our kids. We sat together. We went to sporting events together. We tried to keep everything as smooth and the same as possible.
Did your ex have his significant other with him?
Not at the time.
Okay.
No.
Do you think that kind of put a wedge in things when they start bringing the significant other to the kids' functions and stuff like that?
Yes, it definitely can. I have said this to other parents that have got divorced, and they asked me, how do you guys do it? And I just tell them, if you guys fight, the kids hear it, they see it, and they feel it, and it affects them so deeply. If there's any way that you guys can be mature enough to put your differences aside. And I realize there's circumstances that, there's abuse or there's, drug addiction or there's whatever, circumstances. But if you can help it and it's within your power to do so, please put yourself last and put your kids first. Because if you do that and you can work together, it benefits your kids in the long run so much more. And that's what I would tell people.
It takes people a lifetime just to understand what you just said. How, Tim?
Well,
If they ever get it.
Put your differences aside
It's-
and work together.
That's right.
no, it's really,
What?
it can be done. It's not impossible. And you may hate the person. You may despise them for whatever happened in your marriage or between you or whatever that is. If you can put that in a box and table that, raise your kids, focus on your kids, commit to your kids, that you are going to have this working relationship with their father, with their mother, and you can get this together, your kids are going to be so much better off in that kind of scenario.
You know what? You'll cost a lot of family court attorneys money if a lot of parents follow what you just said. Tim won't have no business.
I'm okay with it.
Honestly, it doesn't seem that hard. And I know people are hurt. And I know people, when you're hurt, you're angry.
Yes.
And when you're angry,
And you're revengeful.
exactly. And you want to, when you have the kids, that's something that you can use as a weapon against the other person, the other parent. Please don't use your kids as a weapon. It just is not good for the kids. And to go
And
back,
the courts use the kids as a weapon against the parents too.
yeah, and that
Which is against Nevada revised statutes.
we could talk
correct?
about family court all day long and all of that, but to go back to that first year, when the kids go with the other parent, it's traumatic. It's a process for them to get used to. I remember when they would go with him, they would cry. When they would go with me, they would cry because they were leaving that other parent. So to get through that first Christmas, that first Easter, for all the first holidays, the birthdays, but even birthdays we did together. Christmas, we did together. And he would come over and we would open presents with the kids together.
Really?
Yeah. Every year. We did that many years.
You didn't have your separate Christmases at your house and he has it at his house?
Many times he would come to my family's home wherever we were celebrating. And then when he did have a significant other, which wasn't until I think 7 years later, she and I always have gotten along, and they're married now. Mm-hmm. And that part was extremely, that part was easy for her and I to get along. But the kids, when you integrate that new person, that's another adjustment. So you have to do that in the right way to where the kids don't feel sidelined, where the kids don't feel ostracized. So we were careful with that. And she and I, the fact that her and I always got along.
Your ex is significant.
Yes. We never had issues. We always sat at sporting events together. We sat at the Christmas musicals together. We had holidays together. So
not many people could do that.
I know. But the fact that we did, and I didn't have, I put all of that stuff aside long ago. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have issues with him. I didn't have issues with her. And we just navigated that together. So my kids are just, they're very well adjusted. And for them to go through that situation, which a lot of kids, it hurts and they aren't successful and they have, scars from that and stuff. We just did the best that we could, and we weren't perfect. I mean, I'm not perfect. We're far from perfect, but we just did our best. That's all.
If you guys have such a good working relationship, why the separation? Why the divorce?
Because there's some things that can't be overcome. Mm-hmm. There are some things that always will be. Okay. And there's certain characteristics and personalities. It's like oil and water sometimes. And you can try and you can go to counseling and you can seek help and advice. And when those things continue on and it becomes destructive, then I think being apart is better for the kids rather than having the controversy with the kids. And it ended up being more successful, I would say.
And I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but I think it's important because it kind of distances you away from a lot of your competition out there. But at what age were your children when your husband decided to, or your ex-husband decided to move out of state?
That was 2 years ago.
Oh, so that's pretty recent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you guys are having all those Christmases together and all that.
We always, and I have had, after, I've lived here for 30 years. So after 15 years, my mom and her husband moved here. And then shortly after, my sister moved here. So I finally had some family that was here. And so we would trade homes on, we would take Christmas on, different homes, my house, my sister, and my mom's. And we would always invite him to come over to holidays. And many times he did. And even, when he had a girlfriend and all that, we would always invite. And we spent many, many holidays together.
How important is that in applying that whole mindset to compromise when it comes to your children? How is that important over into the U.S. Senate category? If
you look at it like, the bigger picture and the greater good, and you look at the people that you're going to be representing, and when you go to Washington, the decisions that you have to make, there's some big decisions, big spending packages, big things that you're looking on in a world platform. And you always have to keep the people of Nevada at the top of your mind, because those are the people that elected you. Those are the people that you're there representing. You're not there representing your own agenda. So when you look at that, and just like I wanted the best for my kids, and I did whatever it took to get and do the best for my kids. Same thing with the people of Nevada. I'm going to do the best that I can and make the best decisions, and the things that they want me to do, I'm going to do that for them. And it's super important to be able to work with, and I'm going to be one person, one vote. So you have to be able to work with other people, both sides of the aisle. You have to be willing to, and that's where my negotiating comes in from, all my business years. When you negotiate for people, you represent people, you defend them, you advocate for them. And all of those skills that I've learned, that's going to come in. That's very important. That's going to come in handy for me because I'm able to work with people and I can get past their objections. And I've worked with people from all walks of life, culture, background, religion. And that's very, very important to be able to say, okay, you're going to give on this, I'm going to give on this. Let's do the best for the people. Let's do the best for the American people. Because a lot of times what we see in DC, they're not doing the best for American people. The government, the American people, we are the ones that are supposed to control the government. We elect these people to represent us. It's we the people, not we the government. And too often we see them selling us down the river. They're doing the best for what's, great for their pockets or all this other stuff that shouldn't be. They forget about we the people. So that's going to be on top of my mind when I'm there, because that's the most important.
Is this your first election?
It is.
So you're a new face?
I am.
Do you have name recognition?
I don't.
Do you have a lot of money?
I don't.
Why are you running for this? Why not run for city council, dog catcher, assembly? Why all the way to the top? Why run for the United States Senate? First time out. Why?
Because I look at the representation that we're getting and what we've had. I don't believe we have representation on our side. I look at the field of candidates, and I've been very involved in politics. The last few years. And I see Nevada continuing to do the same thing over and over again. they send the same candidates forward just because they have a name recognition or because they have the most money. To me,
or because they already made friendships.
Yeah, to me, that doesn't make the best candidate. You have to look at this candidate, who's going to represent you for the right reasons, who's going to be trustworthy. It's not necessarily the one who has that name ID, who's run, a ton of times and who has the most money. Nevada really needs to look at this race in particular. This is a super important race. The decisions that they're making, and this is another reason I see these spending packages, that it's just runaway, reckless spending. I don't see any accountability. And so I want to step in there for Nevada. Everywhere I go in Nevada, I ask these voters, they say, what's your plan? What do you want to do? And I tell them, give me your top 3. What's important to you? What do you want to see done in the country, in our state? And, people have all kinds of issues that they talk about. It's my job to represent and push the people's agenda, not my own.
So how do you feel about these recycled candidates that the party is always pushing?
I feel like the party, and this is, talking about Nevada doing the same thing. They keep doing the same thing and pushing the same people through. But do you notice we keep losing? We keep losing. So if we don't do something different, we're going to keep losing. I don't want to lose because our country is at stake right now. We have a country in crisis, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers will agree. If we don't step in, and we don't step in with force and big numbers and overwhelm the system and get people off the couch, there's a lot of apathy in our state. If we don't get people invigorated to step up, get involved, vote, we're going to lose our country as we know it.
Why do you think Nevada embraces carpetbaggers?
It's interesting. We've seen that multiple times in current candidates, past candidates. I don't understand where they would say to themselves, we have someone who's clearly moved in just to run for politics. They have nothing vested in this state. And then you look at a candidate who has everything vested in this state, their home, their business, their kids born and raised here. Everything, their life has been here for decades and decades. So to me, I don't think people really vet their candidates that well. I think they look at, I've heard this person's name before. I'm going to vote for them. How many times have you hear this all the time, and people by the hundreds call you, who should I vote for? Nobody knows the judicial candidates. I did tons of podcasts with judicial candidates. And so people could get to know them. So we would get that message out to the people. And it's just amazing how little people vet candidates. They don't know their candidates. So I would encourage people, get involved, go to those clubs and meetings. And
when you say clubs, what are you talking about?
There's a bunch of Republican women's clubs around the state. And there's the Clark County meetings. There's state party meetings. There's all kinds of ways where you can hold meet and greets in your house. Candidates will come. Candidates will come to talk to your friends, your family. You get to know them on a personal level. There's so many ways to be involved. And at a minimum, register to vote. At least vote. Do you know how many millions of people sit home every election cycle and don't vote? We have the right, and I believe it's a responsibility, but having that right, it's very special and it's super important. And we, the people controlling this country and the direction this country is going, that's the way it's supposed to be. We do that through our vote. That's how important it is.
I could keep going, but Tim.
Go ahead. Poor Tim.
I'm just letting you go. I know my place. Steve mentioned something about weaponizing kids in family court, but I think we're seeing weaponization of kids other places, the education system being one of them. You have what could arguably say people trying to win the hearts and minds of our children to push a political agenda. How do you see that, especially in the state? What do you plan to do about that?
Kids are at the top of my platform for many reasons. And we do see this sexual education curriculums that are coming into our school system. And they're pushing a certain ideology on these kids. And it has to do with sexual preference and identity and all of these things. I believe once you indoctrinate kids and you indoctrinate and push this certain ideology on these kids, they want to control the kids so they can control the future of this country. The people who are going to stand in the gap and in the way of that are parents, are the adults. We're the ones that it's our responsibility to protect these kids. When I see drag queen shows held at libraries, and you've got 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds in attendance, and they're dressed in minimal, things, I think that is so, I'm completely against that. I'm against the sexualization of kids via drag queen shows, via school curriculum, via when they're putting boys in a girl's locker room to change next to them, in their bathrooms, in their sport programs. Where's the protection for our girls and for the women in this country? Those types of things need to stop. And a lot of that is on the state level. On a federal level, when you're funding through education, the Department of Education, maybe there can be some incentivized funding there where the schools that are participating in putting these boys in the girls' locker rooms, they're not going to get funding for certain things. And there's different ways to fix that. But I think people really need to wake up to the fact that when they're pushing this ideology onto these kids at such a young age, they should be out playing at recess, worried about, who's going to be the pitcher for the baseball team and things like this, kid things, not sexual preference, not identity. It's just when they're pushing this agenda and they're pushing it so hard, they're trying to control the minds of our kids. And people say to me, oh, well, you must be against the transgender community. You must be against the LGBTQ community. No, it's not that at all. What I'm talking about is the sexualization of children. I'm not talking about a grown adult who can make these decisions for themselves. If you want to transition and you want to have that surgery, that's your life. Those are your decisions. I don't intend to control anybody. Like, I'm a live and let live, type of person. So no, I'm not against those people. It's the part that they're doing against the kids. And the trafficking of kids, we all see, through the movie Sound of Freedom. It's been out there, and a lot of people don't even.
Sorry, what's this movie Sound of Freedom? What is that about?
That's about Tim Ballard, who has been out rescuing trafficked kids since 2013. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't realize how bad sex trafficking is in our country and in the world. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are just now waking up to the fact that it is a horrendous issue. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. America is the number one consumer. And
sex trafficking.
These kids, over 2 million kids go missing every year. Where do they go? They can track us down through our phone, to this little pinpoint. They can track people and find people so easily. Where do these kids go? How come we can't find them? They are being trafficked and held as sex slaves, basically. And they are bought and sold multiple times. And they are raped continuously, multiple times a day. And I would say to people, People say, I talk about kids all the time. I talk about, this issue all the time. Every single elected official should be screaming this from the rooftops. It should be at the top of our list. If your kid was out there and your kid was 5 years old and missing and was sold as a sex slave and being held and raped multiple times a day, how far up on that priority list would that become? It would become at the top. So the kids are the future of our nation. They are so important. We have to stand in that gap. We have to defend them and protect them. And I've been involved for decades, 30 years, in children charities. I've known about sex trafficking for decades. And it is something that, and I have my own nonprofit. I started my own nonprofit because I want to take care of
the name of it?
Den Mothers, denmothers.org. And I started that because I want to help kids. I have discovered over the years how many hungry kids we have just in our valley. There are 1 in 4 homes have food challenges. Some things people don't even recognize or understand that the need is so great. I want to help trafficked kids. And one day I want to have a facility on the ground where I can house these kids and rehabilitate them, take care of runaway teens, pregnant teens, abused moms with small children, the needy, the hungry homeless veterans. I want to take care of these people. That's going to be later on in life when I have all of my time to dedicate to something. I'd love to have a facility in every state, a Den Mothers facility in every state in this country to do that very thing. For now, I do what I can. I have donated thousands and thousands of dollars and hours to children's charities for decades. And kids are so important. And the atrocities that happen. And now that this movie has come out and it shows, they talk about an actual rescue that they did and what happened to these kids. And it's hard to watch. It takes courage to go see that movie. It takes courage to open your eyes to such horrifying things that happen in our country and around the world. Millions and millions of kids are being held as slaves. You think slavery's over? It's not. The human trafficking, just look at our border. They're bringing women, children over the border, and that just fuels the sex trafficking industry. And the fact that this administration has not stood firm.
You're talking about the Biden administration.
Has not stopped I call it an invasion. It's an invasion into our country. To me, that's treasonous. They are not protecting the citizens of this country. They're not protecting the kids and the vulnerable kids and women that have been raped over and over again from these people, these traffickers that are bringing these people across the border. And now we look at Nevada. We're at the top of that list for trafficking. Our industry, look, the tourism industry, it just lends itself to that type of crime. The penalties are not tough enough. We were just talking about that. Not severe enough. They could tighten that and expand those penalties to life without parole. Or I've even heard a lot of people talk about the death penalty for people who have trafficked and are trafficking children. When you hear the things and when you're courageous enough to open your eyes and your ears and to see what really is happening to these kids, 2 to 5-year-olds being raped multiple times a day, 2-year-old, imagine that, these babies. People don't stop long enough to think, oh my gosh, what are we doing? What are we doing? And at the federal level, I talked to a gentleman who works on a federal task force. He was brought into one of the Republican women's clubs, and he was one of the speakers, and it was during Child Trafficking Month. And I sat with him after, and I said, what is your federal budget for this? And he said the DOJ gives him 12 to 13 million. That's it. How do you expect to combat this problem that is so huge, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and an open border where they're just bringing these kids in right and left? How are you supposed to have the manpower and the resources to do any good at all? So I see hundreds of millions of dollars and billions. We send billions to Ukraine. We send, 200 million over to the Middle East for gender studies. In one of these spending packages. And I think to myself, what I could do with $200 million against this here in our own country for our own kids. So I think the priorities need to be adjusted. I think appropriation of money needs to be adjusted. There's so many things that we could do to really combat this.
You said this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, the sex trafficking.
Yep.
And I've been in this business since '98, political business. I probably hardly heard anybody talk about sex trafficking. Why are you so passionate about it? In fact, I haven't even heard any of your opponents talking about sex trafficking. Is this really an important issue, or people are just not educated enough to even respond to the sex trafficking out there?
It's lack of awareness.
Okay.
It's lack of knowledge.
Okay.
It's lack of courage to really get involved, because people don't want to know about evil. People don't want to dive into the darkness of what really happens.
Mm-hmm.
That takes a certain kind of person to where you can stomach it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to be motivated enough to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, they don't have those skills, and you can't fault them for that. Some people are just not cut out for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been involved in this for so many decades, and so I have been made aware, and I know this, and to give my time and money personally to something like this. So I just try and spread the word that this is an important issue. We have many important issues in this country, but I put kids at the top because they are our future. And if we don't protect them, who's gonna?
I could see it being a multi-billion-dollar industry, because when it comes to weapons, you sell it once and they're gone. When it comes to drugs, you sell it once and they're gone. But when it comes to kids, you could just sell it, get it back, sell it, get it back, sell it, get it back.
Exactly.
Is that what's going on?
That's exactly how it works. As sick and as evil as that is, that's exactly the premise.
And as a U.S. Senator, how would you stop this?
Well, like I said, the priority needs to be moved up of this.
So you got to change the whole
funding.
thinking.
Yeah, funding
Okay.
and appropriating those funds needs to be moved up. And that's where I can come in and talk to people, just, educate them, make them aware. And I don't know why we see the media and we see people that are talking against the Sound of Freedom movie.
Why would they do that?
I don't know. It's beyond me. I don't know. They're saying it's a conspiracy, or this isn't real, or all of this.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is sickening, because it is a problem. Anybody who's not willing to step in and help with this and to advocate for these kids, it's egregious.
And I commend you for that, honestly, because there is an awareness issue. And I prosecuted sex crimes in this state for 3 rural counties. And I think that the most apt thing I ever heard was, these are not crimes that take place in the 50-yard line at the Super Bowl. You're not going to see a lot of evidence in public. These are going on in back rooms and in places in Vegas and Reno that people would not believe. You're walking by sex trafficking establishments daily. Mm-hmm. If you're in one of those cities. So I commend you on the awareness. And yeah, why are there no billboards? Why are there not PSAs about this? Mm-hmm. And that's certainly something you can fix.
There was a bill that came out, I want to say 2-3 years ago. And now you see in all the bathrooms in the airports, right? You see those little posters that they put on if you're, a victim of trafficking, and to be aware. If you see something, say something. And, but to me, and that's a great step. That's a step towards helping the problem. But there needs to be so much more done. And a lot of that's going to come into with funding and resources.
Okay. I want to go back to this. I don't know if we mentioned it. I want to go back to this war on women.
Mhm.
Is there a war on women out there?
You know, I believe there is, and a lot of women believe it and feel it and see it. And I talk to a lot of people, like I said, all around this state. And when they call moms birthing persons,
What they call
birthing
them?
persons.
Birthing persons?
Yeah.
You mean they just spit babies out?
Yes.
They're just a baby machine?
Yeah, the person.
They're not human?
Yeah, the person who had the baby.
Look at them too.
The reason they're changing this narrative
Uh-huh.
is to appease the transgender community, because now they tell us men can have babies, right?
No.
Yeah, they teach our kids this. Men can have babies, they can lactate, they can menstruate. These are not men, they're biological women.
Mm.
So by calling somebody a birthing person, you get rid of that gender. You get rid of that male, female. You get rid of, they want to take away that female mom name. And to me, that's highly offensive. Only a biological woman, and we all know that everyone knows this. They can tell whatever lies to themselves to make them feel better all they want. Only a biological woman with a womb can have a baby. So they can transition and they can call themselves a man and they can have a baby only because they were a biological woman and they have a womb. So when they push this stuff, and this goes back to the other thing too, when they're lying to our kids and telling them that a man can have a baby, that's wrong. But you notice that Jill Biden brought in a man, or it was a trans man, a biological man that is a woman now, calls himself a woman.
They had an operation.
I don't know if they had an operation or not.
Okay.
But this person comes in, a biological man, calling them a female and celebrating that as a woman on International Women's Day. To us women, us biological females, that's offensive to us. And the fact that look at the Bud Light commercial, with the trans woman and all these things. They want to erase gender completely. And even now in the elementary schools, they don't want them to call each other boys and girls. They call them now, and this was actually in the
gender fluid, is that what they call it?
They call it people with vulvas and people with penises, because they don't want to say boy and girl. So it's their agenda to push this whole thing, and that everyone is the same. We're not. Women have roles. Women have very specific roles in our life, and we have talents and gifts that y'all didn't have and you weren't given. Men, you have your roles, God-given roles and strengths that you were given that we don't have. And we work together great. But to erase all of that and to try and say that everyone is the same and equal and all of that, no. That's offensive to me, because going through childbirth, being a mom, and forever having those scars as a woman and being called a mom, I will never give that up.
Speaking of that, do you think that there is some type of Me Too movement out there in the state or in this country?
I believe there is. And I believe women have been put to the side. They feel like they're not heard. They feel like they're maybe not as important. And they have had these circumstances and these things happen to them. And I believe they want to be heard. Mm-hmm. So, in this particular game, this is a man's world. Mm-hmm. But look how women are coming into politics and how many women have fought their way through. And women are very effective. And women are good at getting people together and bringing people together.
Mm-hmm.
So,
do you think it will take a stronger woman to beat a woman?
I've heard that a lot, and a lot of people say that to me. All over this state.
Meaning Jackie Rosen
Yes.
is the prime
Right.
target, right?
I hear that from so many people,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell me, I don't say that to people. I don't, people bring that to me
Mm-hmm.
and say that to me, and they say it's going to take a woman to beat Jackie Rosen.
Mm-hmm.
Because the political climate that we're in, when we have this war on women and we have this war on our kids and this culture war that we're in and the abortion issue, these are female women issues and mama bear issues. And they're going to run on social issues. Republicans I don't believe they put enough attention on social issues. They like to run more on the fiscal issues. But the Democrats, they won just on abortion alone last time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all they could run on.
Isn't abortion in our Constitution?
It is. And let's get to abortion. Yeah, we'll talk about abortion. I think the men sometimes shy away from the abortion issue and they just say, yeah, it's protected in our Constitution, period, end of story. And they don't want to discuss it further.
Mm-hmm.
But a mom and being pregnant and having kids, you can talk further on that. But no, I have a lot of people tell me that it's going to take a woman, that the men are just not going to be able to combat against Jackie Rosen.
Do you think the Republican Party is, when they rally around these recycled candidates and these carpetbag candidates that are male, you think they're not looking at the entire picture? All they're looking at is getting out of the primary, but they're not looking at winning a U.S. Senate seat in our state capitol. What do you think they're looking at?
I think that is a huge problem. And that is a strategic problem because they can run this person that has that name ID or that has the money and they can run them through the primary, but they're not looking at that end goal.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to look at the political climate. You have to look at what they're going to run on. And you have to look at your candidates and what their background is, what their strengths are, what their talents are. And you have to say to yourself, who is going to be effective against that incumbent? And they don't do that. There's not enough attention to that.
What do you think about these egotistical men out there that look at women as somebody to what are birth persons? What you said? Look at women as a birth person, somebody that's they in their perspective think that women are naggy and their place should be barefoot and pregnant at home, and maybe even make them a sandwich. What do you think about those egotistical, chauvinistic men that says, I'm not going to vote for a woman, or I'm not going to vote because she's a woman? What are the qualifications does she have? Why should I give her my vote? Is she running because she's a woman, or is she running because she wants to really serve the people? What does she do? What do you tell these egotistical men out there that think women should be just making them a sandwich and staying home and deliver kids? What do you say to that population of people that are out there?
To me, that group are fewer and farther between, in this day and age, thank goodness. But to them, that's highly offensive to me. Mm-hmm. And I believe to all women, because I work hard and I've always worked hard and I've put a lot of time and effort into my kids and my business. And for somebody to come along and say something like that is highly offensive. But I would say for the most part, men, they don't think that way. I know there's that element out there, but I think for the most part, men don't. And I'm just going to run my race. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to work hard. And regardless of what this person says or that person says, you're never going to please everybody. You're always going to have the naysayers. You're going to have the detractors. They're going to call you names. But none of that matters. I am going to Washington to represent the people of this state. I'm doing this for our kids and the people of this state. I'm doing it for the betterment of all of us, of we the people. This is not I don't need the name. I don't need the fame. I don't need the power. I don't need the money. None of that means anything to me. What means something to me is that we have somebody there for the right reasons. And I think too many times we see these candidates that are not there for the right reasons. They're doing it to have the name and the fame, and they want the money. They want to enrich themselves. They want their businesses to grow and all this stuff. We hear candidates say, oh, it's great for business.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it's about. We're supposed to be there for the people, not ourselves.
Tim?
And I agree with you. Things are changing, and that element you're talking about, the more misogynistic element. Look at family court. Look at the legal profession. Dominated by men. Now what? Is it 80% of the family court judges are women?
I think there's 58. Well, if we just go with the Clark County District Court seats, there are actually 58 district court seats, and I believe 42 of them are dominated by women.
So yeah,
That's a lot.
That is a lot, and you see the difference in the changes and the way things are moving on. Are there any particular women in politics that you see as trailblazers that you look up to, that you would style yourself against those people?
I would say the ones who stand up for America, the ones that stand up for the people. People call them, like the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Lauren Boeberts, and they call them the loudmouths, and they call them all kinds of names. But if you get down to the women and all elected officials, Josh Hawley, look at Jim Jordan, all these others that actually care about the people. And I want to be that kind of elected official where I serve the people. And yeah, sometimes we have to get a little bit loud, because if you're sitting there just going along with, which our current incumbent and her counterpart there, they just go along with all these spending packages and all this. You don't really hear them yelling from the rooftops, what are we going to do to protect America? What are we going to do to protect our kids? They have let this stuff, just our border be open and spending packages be signed. So yeah, I want to be the one where I am going to stand up for truth. I am going to stand up for the people. And if that takes, you got to get into the mix and the fray with people. Sometimes that's what it takes. But these people that just sit and don't do anything, and they don't have a voice, and they're just there occupying a seat, I don't want to be that way.
I want to stick on this women thing for just a little bit longer. What do you say about these men that say that women wear their emotions on their sleeves? They're too emotional. It's their time of the month. That's why they get that way. How do you maneuver through those types of third world thinking? And I call it third world thinking because just the other day, Afghanistan women couldn't be educated, right? Until we went there. Now they get to go to school. And I remember women had their own struggles in this country. The right for equal pay, the right to vote, and all that. How do you convince? Because you said you're a negotiator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that you compromise
Mm-hmm.
in your real estate business. How do you reach these men that have this third world mentality, thinking about a women's place in this country?
I believe that consistency, professionalism, those things, when you can sit across the table from a group of men, let's say, and you maintain professionalism, you maintain your position, and you don't back down. And there's lots of ways to get your point across, and you say compromise. when you work together, people may construe that as, oh, you're just going to give up, or you're just going to give it away.
I mean, working together.
It is working together. It's bringing two sides together for a common goal. And that's what I do, basically, every day of my life. I'm always constantly negotiating and representing my side. But we also have to work with the other side, and usually we meet in the middle. But being a woman,
Let me stop you right. Does that mean compromising your integrity, or
no,
compromising
of course
your
not.
faith? Or?
Of course not.
Okay.
No, of course not. That does not mean that at all.
Okay.
No, that means working together so that we can come to an agreement.
Okay.
Because if you are at a standstill, nothing gets done.
Okay.
So, but yeah, a lot of women, sometimes there's emotions. Some women are more emotional than others. Some women are just
emotionally. I mean, crying, or emotionally means upset, because a lot of men, when they get emotional, they usually get upset. I mean, they usually show anger. Some of them. When women get upset, it's more of a teary eye, a tearjerker. Well, explain.
Everybody's different. Everybody's different. You have some women that are more emotional than others. Some wear their heart on their sleeve. Some don't. Some are a little bit more reserved, and they hold that in. I think that there is a delicate balance there. Women bring to the table a nurturing side, because that's in our nature. We're moms. I believe that's just in us. So we tend to be a little more empathetic. So when we come and bring our gifts and talents to the table, it has a different touch on it. It has a different, than what a man would bring. And so I think that men and women can work very well together, and you have that synergy to get to a goal, to get to an agreement, and to move things forward. So yeah, I tend to be very much controlled, professional. And when I have people in my car that are yelling at each other and fighting,
I don't want that house. You gotta take it.
And at each other's throats, you have to always be calm. You have to be that mediator, not only between your clients in the car, but between the other side as well.
You ever pulled over and say, "Shut up"?
No. No, but I have many times. You have to step in, and you have to address the concerns of the one who, is upset, address the concerns of the other and what they're fighting about, and bring them back to, okay, here's the facts, here's what, the pros and cons, and you bring them back around. And then we can move on with stuff. But I've had to do that multiple times.
A U.S. Senator is a very, very extreme, powerful position. I mean, you'll be one of 100, right? Because there's 100 of you. Mm-hmm. And since we're talking about women, how do you feel about women being, and I'm sure this is brought up time and time again, but it hasn't been brought up enough, just like sex trafficking of children. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about women in combat and women in elite special forces, like the Delta Force, the Rangers, the Commandos, the elite infantries? How do you feel about women in these specialized forces? And how do you feel about women in combat?
I commend the ones that have made that choice. And I thank all of our veterans for their service. I think that's so important. But women, if that's what they choose to do and they want to do that, that should be their right to do. And I fully support them. And I think that they're wonderful, they're brave, they're courageous. And all of them that make that choice, I think it's awesome. And I would definitely back them, support them. As far as the special forces, there's a set of standards that are set. And I believe that they should reach these standards.
They definitely don't have the strength standards compared to them.
They don't. but that's just the way we're made and the way we compare.
Do you think it should
to
be
men.
a little bit down, like holding logs up for hours on end? That's one of the training tactics in the specialized unit, holding logs up. And do you think it should be? I'm gonna use this word, dumber down to satisfy the strength structure of a woman, or do you think that the women should keep up with the men?
I look at it this way. The military has these standards and rules and practices in place for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They are producing warriors for our country.
Mm-hmm.
They're producing fighters that are defending our country, whether it's a man or a woman. Whatever that standard is, needs to be met. Because when you put them out on the battlefield and they're out there in a fight, they need to be trained and they need to be at a certain level in order to do those things that they're going to be faced with. I support all of them for going in that type of a program and that training. It is beyond rigorous. I, for one, could never do that. And I applaud them. So yes, I think that the standards that are set need to be met. And I think that's important because you don't want to die on the battlefield. You need to know that the person that's got your back is able to defend you, help you, and do those things to be successful in the battlefield. Whether it's a man or a woman, you can't sit there, in the middle of a fight and say, oh, I've got this female behind me. I don't feel protected. I don't feel like she's going to have my back. I don't feel like she's going to be able to do it. We don't want that. We want them, regardless whether it's a man or a woman. We want them to say and have full confidence in that partner that's next to them.
Tim?
I got nothing on this one. I haven't served, but I agree with the standard you're setting. Do you feel that the standards right now need to be changed, or are you okay with where the standards are in the military at this point in time? I
believe that where they are, these guys, they have to work hard to pass those tests. And no, I believe what they set as standards, where they can produce the best fighters and the best warriors to defend our country, then that's it. We're the strongest, we're the best military, and fighting force in the world. So,
there's a few veterans in your race
mm-hmm.
for Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's about 339,000 veterans in the state of Nevada. And the veterans are like brotherhood type of deal. If you're a veteran, I'm gonna support you because you're a veteran. How are you going to reach out to the veteran community out there? And how are you going to get them to vote for you instead of these veterans that are in your race running for U.S. Senate?
I talk to a lot of veterans and I know a lot of veterans. I have represented a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. My ex-husband is a veteran. My brother-in-law is a retired Green Beret. I listen and my son serves. I listen to the concerns that they have. And there's a lot of work that we could do in this country, and I intend to do, for veterans. And they talk about the VA disability process and applying for that. Some don't even know that they can apply. You had a guest on this show at one time talking about that very thing. And so many people tell me that process could be streamlined. It could be made so much better. And after these veterans go out and do what they do for us, and to put them through such a cumbersome process, it shouldn't be. It should just be easy. We should make their life easy. We have too many homeless veterans on our street.
Let me stop you right there.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that when a veteran is going to get out of the military and go
mm-hmm.
into civilian life,
mm-hmm.
instead of waiting for them to go into civilian life to start
the process.
The process for the
Right.
the service connected disabled veteran. You're saying to start that process while on active duty.
Well, and now at time of separation, that's part of their exit package. That never used to be. So now they have put, apply, see what your disability percentage is. When they separate it wasn't like that. So they've improved that part. But to the ones that have been out for a long time, and maybe they were only 60 or 70% disabled at the time of separation, but now your body, goes
Getting
through.
older.
Yeah, some of these things manifest later in life. And I talked to my brother-in-law about this very thing. For him to go back and to be considered 100% disabled, that you have to enlist help to do the process. It's very cumbersome, takes a long time. Your medical records are not always accessible, which at a tap of a finger, they should be. And there could be a lot of things done differently. And also the mental health providers for veterans. I hear from many that there's not enough mental health providers in not enough categories. Maybe they're facing different issues, and there's not many providers to help them with that. So I just think the veterans, I'm so thankful for them, and they're so precious to our country, and we need to do much more for them.
So you would streamline the transition process, getting out of the military into civilian life when it contains to the service-connected disability benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you something that I asked Mike Pence when he was running for VP with Donald Trump. At the time, it was at the Henderson something, I forget what it was. At the time, there was a survey saying that there are 145,000 veterans that are currently incarcerated in federal and state prisons because of whatever, they broke the law or whatever. How would you, and let's strike that. And in this state, we recently got the Veterans Treatment Court. I believe it was signed into law back in 08 or 09 by Governor Gibbons. And it took 2 years for Southern Nevada to catch up Clark County. In 2010, they finally came with the Veterans Court. How would, and I believe you were mentioning a little bit about Veterans Court when we opened up this segment. How would you help these veterans that are incarcerated instead of, they should be giving them treatment in my perspective, because I am a veteran. They should give them treatment instead of trying to lock them up and incarcerate them. Because, especially when you go to combat and you see horrific things, there is PTSD out there. Mm-hmm. How would you streamline the system, or how would you try to get these other states out there to implement a veterans treatment program within their state to help these veterans that are going through a lot of mental stuff, whether it's anger, alcohol, or what have you? How would you help them to get whole again?
Every state, and they would benefit from having a veterans court, and for that to be the first thing to be considered would be helpful. Each case obviously has its own, circumstances and all of that, but on a federal level, to have a program where some resources and funds could go to some programs to uplift that, promote that, and talk about that. Again, it's awareness. A lot of people don't think about this. They don't know about Veterans Court. They don't know the things that veterans go through. So if that is an appropriate place for, depending on what they're charged with, and they can benefit from that, why not? I think that should be the first thing to consider. And the people that are locked up, why can't we go back through each prison? Why can't we have programs at the state levels where they go back and they look at these cases and see, why are these people sitting in prison? Could they benefit from another program to rehabilitate them? Where did they go wrong with this? And with mental health, it's a tricky thing. And sometimes that's not given enough credit. It's not given enough attention. Because if there were some care and mental health, given to these given to these veterans, maybe these things never would have happened in the first place.
In the military, when I got out, we just got out. That was it, and into civilian life. And I've been asking around, and I was trying to figure out how veterans could transition out into civilian life, meaning they go through some type of program, how to do a resume, how to apply for a job interview, how to dress, because we don't know. We wear in the cami greens 24/7, right? For 365 or 366 days out of the year. And I heard that the Air Force, of all branches of the service, is the Air Force. The Air Force, I call them the civilian branch of the military, my perspective. They have a transition program, from military to civilian life, which, in my perspective, they're already civilians. But how would you implement a program that would transition all the branches of service? If they have 6 months to a year to get out, would you implement a program saying, okay, you got to go to this program to help you to transition into the civilian population? How would you get the other branches to get along with that type of program?
I think that getting people together and looking at the benefits and streamlining all of that, I think that would encourage people to set, certain standards, practices, and what you're saying, all do the same thing because it all benefits the veteran, regardless of branch. So having something consistent and having things set forth that here's what you need to do, here's what we offer for you to be successful after separation. I think all of that could be looked at and improved for the veteran.
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. The border is just, you mentioned it earlier in the segment, the border is out of control. As a U.S. Senator, what would you do to strengthen our borders? And it's the same hypocrisy. All these, maybe not all these, but a lot of these politicians that agree with open border, that are for open border, these same politicians have walls around their homes, lock their doors at nights, put the alarm on their house, make sure there's some type of security around their area. How would you control the border and really expose the hypocrisy of these politicians that are for open border, but for security at their own house? How would you expose that? And what would you do to control the border population?
I think that Trump had it right during his administration about with the border. Okay. We completed miles.
Let Mexico
miles
pay for it?
Yeah. Yeah. And, we built a lot of that wall. He had, the Remain in Mexico. And those things were working. That was functioning, and the border was protected. Now it's just an open, just let's walk on through. I mean, we all see the videos. We see what's happening. Millions and millions have been let into our country. And guess who's paying for that? We are. So it is cumbersome on our system. We're paying for their medical and their living expenses and all of this. Day one, we take back the Senate. We stop that. We deploy more border agents, National Guard. We get troops on the border, and we get this under control. But right now, it's not. It's a complete invasion, and that's wrong.
And what do you say to these bleeding hearts out there that talk about, well, they're coming here for a better life? What do you say to those people?
I say legal immigration is what we've always had legal immigration. And our country is made up of a lot of immigrants. I'm against the illegal immigration.
And how are
I'm
they
aga-
illegal?
When they come over this border and they're shoved around our country,
Mhm.
and they're given all these benefits and all this stuff that we're paying for. No. I don't agree with any of that. And all the people that I've talked to who immigrated to this country and they went through the process,
Mhm.
the legal process, takes a long time and it takes money. And so these
I went
people
through
that
that
have done it
process.
right, yeah, these people that have done it the right way,
Mhm.
they're mad at what they see.
Mhm.
Because if they did it the right way, why can't everyone else? Why are they special? So it hurts the American people because it takes our tax dollars
Mhm.
and puts it towards that when it should be putting it towards something else. Other things that we've talked about today. It should be going towards American citizens and kids and things that we could be paying for instead of, burdening our system with illegals.
So when I joined the Marine Corps in I'm going to give my age out now, in '85, when I joined the Marine Corps in '85, to reenlist, you had to be a citizen of this country.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in for the first time as a naturalization. I wasn't. I'm sorry. As a Jamaican citizen, but living in this country legally. But to reenlist, I had to become a United States citizen to reenlist for the second time. And I had to go through the process. I had to take the tests. I had to, and it was a lengthy test too. I had to get all my documents in order. I had to know, they asked me to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and all that stuff. And I became a citizen in '89 for this country. Do you think that process should be the same, that anybody, if you're here in this country legally, you be able to go in our military forces, but to reenlist, you have to become an American citizen, naturalized? Do you believe that process should stay the same?
I do. And I believe
And why is that?
I believe that if you are willing to serve our country, and I've heard people talk about, all these people, thousands serve our country that are not citizens. They're here on a green card. Should they be granted citizenship?
Or amnesty, right?
Yeah. And I believe that if they're willing to serve our country, yeah, we need to take a look at that. That says something, and that's important. And that should be made available to them.
What about dreamers? What about, they say, children that uprooted from their country and brought here by their parents, and this is all they know? What do you say about those kids?
That is something definitely to be looked at, because they've been here for a long time. They were brought here, they didn't come by themselves, and they were brought here. So they're kind of caught in the middle here, and that needs to be considered. And, some of these decades they've been here. So yeah, I think everything, it needs to be looked at, everything in moderation, right? Everything you need to consider all sides of something before you just make a decision. And it's not always black and white. So there's a lot of things to look at and consider. And we need to consider our country and our citizens first.
One of your opponents, all that person talks about is election integrity, and figure they're going to win this thing just based on that one subject matter. Tell me your perspective on election integrity. How do you see it? What do you think needs to be revamped? Do you believe in ballot harvesting? All that stuff. What do you tell us a little bit about election integrity?
Well, the people I talk to, and I hear this all the time, people believe there's fraud. People believe there's cheating in our elections, and that's been going on for decades and decades. This is not something new. People think, oh, just the 2020 election, all of a sudden there's fraud. No. So our elections are so important. If we don't fix the problems that we have in our elections, then we don't have free and fair elections, and our country is doomed. So it's very high on the list of priorities. all this ballot harvesting and these things, all the new rules that came in during COVID in our state, under the guise of emergency orders, and they, in the middle of the night, all of a sudden they made these changes. So yeah, I would get rid of ballot harvesting. I would support a national voter ID. We give ID for everything that we do.
Even cigarettes now, you got to give ID.
Oh my goodness.
Huh?
Now everybody's getting scanned. Anytime you want to buy alcohol or cigarettes, they actually scan your ID.
Yeah.
So what? And the people that say that somehow that disenfranchises voters, or it's racist, or whatever they say, that just blows my mind. So definitely that our voter rolls all across this country, there are huge efforts being made right now to clean up our voter rolls, and that definitely needs to be done. So, and all of this, you can accept ballots up to however many days after the election. What happened to knowing the decision that night?
I liked it that night.
We always have done that. We always made that happen. Why all of a sudden can we not do that?
Because it's room
anymore?
For cheating.
Right. So they bring in these ballots at a later time. So we saw all the evidence. Everyone can see it.
Why isn't anybody being charged? How come nobody's being convicted?
Well, there has been many people charged. I've seen people, all across this nation that have been, charged for this. But to ignore facts and to ignore thousands and thousands of affidavits, to ignore what we saw on video of people running stacks of ballots over and over through these tabulators. The one video where they were bringing the boxes out from underneath the tables that were stashed under there, full of ballots. There were so many things that went wrong in the 2020 election. To sit there and say that it was perfect and free and fair and all that, now that's ridiculous.
So you're not an election denier, or are you election denier?
Yeah, that whole election denier thing. What cracks me up is the double standard, because back when Hillary lost, oh my goodness, they were fighting back, and they were saying it was, they were cheating and all that stuff. People in Congress have challenged election results for years and years and years.
I challenged it one time.
2020 was not the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So for them all of a sudden to label everybody election deniers, no, we just wanted the truth. So elections they have consequences, huge consequences, and they're very important. And I've had people, past candidates that ran, and they would say to me, Steph, why would you run? Why would you put your energy, your time, and your effort into something like this when they rig the system, or they cheat, or it's not going to be fair and all this? And I say to them, what are we going to do? Give up? What are we going to do? Just let them have it? No, we're not going to let them have our country. So I'm doing this despite of all that. And I know that there's efforts being made on our side to have more poll watchers, workers, and to keep an eye on things at these election centers and what's going on in the counting and all this. It's just people were made aware in a big way in the 2020 election of the things that could go wrong. So eyes are open, we're paying attention, and we're going to obviously work within the bounds of the law. Ballot harvesting is legal here. So I believe they're putting together a huge ballot harvesting program and team to do that. So
the Republicans.
We got to beat them beat the Democrats at their own game. They do that very well. So
Tim, you could jump in any time,
Not Jim, not today.
Not today.
You're talking about working within the bounds of the law, and I think a lot of the perspective from the average American citizen is that a lot of times politicians don't act within the bounds of the law. What could you say about bringing some kind of accountability to Washington?
That is, my goodness, that's huge. because we look at our system now, we see the two-tiered system of government there. We see the DOJ, the FBI, they're weaponized against conservatives. And we see this in this double standard. We see the little slap on the wrist that Hunter got and the sweet deal that he got. Anyone else, if that were you or I, we would be in prison already. The accountability is really from everybody, all of the elected officials. It can't just be one. It has to be, hey guys, what are we doing to our people? What are we doing to America? We can't have a system of government that favors one side. And that is, we've got double standard. We have hypocrisy. We have this two-tier justice system. It does not work. That creates division. That creates war between the people. We can't have that. So we really need to, and I want to take a look at that. Where is this money being spent? Where's the wasteful spending? Where can we cut back? You know, if we spend more money than we make, we go bankrupt, right? It comes to a place where you can't keep going. But our government and the people who have made those decisions along the way, from decades before us till now, we have gotten into such debt. And they just think, oh, we'll just spend and, print more money and we just go along our way. No, because now we're to this point where it's a crisis, and it has been. So if we don't get control of spending, if we don't look at those places where we can cut back, do these elected officials need a building built and named after them? Do they really? What do we really need? The federal government has gotten so inflated. And I think if a bunch of us got together and collectively looked at this with Americans in mind, first and foremost, that we could cut a lot of that wasteful spending and get some of this under control.
Do you believe that's possible, though? Is it naive to think that the government can police itself adequately?
I believe anything is possible when you get like-minded people together, and even people that you can talk to in a common sense sort of way, and say, look, here's the benefits to our country for this. How can you say no? Everybody knows that Washington needs accountability. Everybody knows that. We see it. How did these politicians get into office and they're worth, $500,000, and then all of a sudden they're worth $50 million? How does this stuff happen? So until we come back and take control of our government and this system that is supposed to be we the people, we're still going to have the same thing. It's just like when I say to Nevada, you keep putting the same, ones through, you're going to get the same results. Do something different. We need to do something different.
You talked about accountability in Washington. And how does that look like?
That looks like, saying to people, look at the position that you have put America in.
Would term limits help?
Term limits would be, I'm completely in support of term limits.
For Congress and Senate?
Yes, absolutely. 2 terms, go back to your home and go do your business. I look at the makeup of Congress. It's mostly attorneys, and no offense, Tim.
None taken.
Back in the Founding Fathers' day, there were farmers, shoe fitters, horseshoe fitters. There were carpenters.
I have said that many times. Where are the farmers? Where are the teachers? Mm-hmm. Where are the realtors? Where are the construction workers? Where are these people?
The everyday people.
Exactly.
Not saying that you're not everyday.
Well, there's a point to this.
You're when we need you.
It's when you
Tim, I'm in jail. Come get me.
Then I'm important to you. No, but you have a good point here. Lawyers have, I think, second to dentists and air traffic controllers, the highest level of mental illness and substance abuse out of any other profession, and yet Our government is full of lawyers.
For all you
Go
have
figure.
to do, all you have to do is go back and look at the decades of what's been done in Congress. What have they chosen to spend money on and to get our country in debt over? Look at these things and look at who are the people that have been making those decisions. And say to yourself, do we need the average, ordinary American worker that is not rich, not part of that elite club? Just, do we need that perspective? Because I think perspective has been lost along the way. I look at myself and I'm a mom. I'm a small business owner. I am not rich. I'm probably the least wealthy person in this race, I would say. And I would say that we need to get these people into office who can relate to the person who is struggling at the gas pump, who's struggling at the grocery store to afford these things, who struggles each month to make ends meet, and to really look at these people and say, you know what? I understand. I've been there. I know what that's like. When you can relate to that speaks volumes, because those are the people that you're going to protect.
Digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
What's your perspective on that?
Well,
I think it's a slippery slope, because the government could just stop your money anytime they want.
right. It's coming. They've got the Fed one now that's in place, and you can voluntarily, sign up.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in a very short period of time that we will have a digital currency completely. They will get rid of cash. And that's all because they want to control. They want to have world domination. They want to have a one world government. All you have to do is listen to these people at the World Economic Forum. They don't hide what their plans are. They outright say it. People don't want to listen. They don't want to know what's going on. But if you go back and listen to some of these things, what Klaus Schwab says, you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy about it, right? They don't want us to have personal property and things like that. They want to shove us all into electronic vehicles or electric vehicles, because they can shut off the power. Then you're not going anywhere, right? Same with the digital currency. If you're not, let's say you're not up to the vax standard that they set, or you're not doing what they want you to do, they can turn off your ability to purchase goods. So it is coming, and it's scary for a lot of people. And of course, I would fight against that and fight for freedom for the people, and also fight against all of these, controlling things, in this, all in the name of climate change and this climate crisis. I don't believe it's a crisis. They're making it a crisis so they can implement all of these things. And it's all to control of the people. So I am for liberty, freedom, live and let live. I will defend the people's rights, the Constitution, and all of this. So yeah, I think that that agenda that they're pushing in the name of climate is way too far. Way too far.
So you're running for United States Senate,
Mm-hmm.
and if and when you win the election, even if you come out of a primary election, you be the first Republican female to do so in the state, and you're representing the state of Nevada. So you're going to make history regardless.
Right.
You're representing the state of Nevada, but at the same time, you're representing the nation as a whole, as the United States, because your vote affects the nation, but your vote also affects internationally. So let's see how your mind is on international stuff. Mm-hmm. You got North Korea wants South Korea, right? You got China want Taiwan, right? You got Iran wants to be a super nuclear power, mm-hmm. right? And you have Russia currently at war with Ukraine. How would you resolve the Russian-Ukraine crisis that are currently in the news today?
Yeah, let's talk about each of those issues. I think that with Ukraine. We have been sending billions of dollars over there without any kind of accounting or audit. What is that going towards? And there has not been any meaningful peace talks that I have seen from this administration to sit down with Putin and Zelensky and say, hey, we need to stop this. We need to make peace. First, before anything, peace. Peace should be our number one goal, not to go in militarily. If we can have a peaceful resolution with any country, with any kind of conflict, that is the goal, first and foremost, I would say. And I believe that they have failed. They have not even attempted, I don't believe, earnestly and honestly to come to an agreement to stop this. They just keep sending money. So I think that needs, and President Trump talked about that too in one of his speeches. He says that he would have it fixed in a day. But he would come to the negotiating table to talk peace and resolution. His answer is not to continue to send money. These are our tax dollars. So when I look at foreign policy as a whole, I would look at it, how are we going to protect America and protect Americans and put peace first, put us first, how it's going to affect our people, because we represent America. And we need to look at this stuff in that way. So with China, I was just reading that they were sending dozens of planes over there and warships over to Taiwan. That is an act of force and aggression. I mean, they could invade and take them over at any time. What's America going to do? We have had and kept everything status quo for decades. And it's been a popular opinion through all the presidents, whether it's Democrat or Republican, to keep the status quo. Even the people over there believe, a majority of them want to keep it status quo. But if China goes in, we're going to have to make that choice. We're going to have to make the decision what we're going to do. And you've got to take all of the facts and consider that and consider what's best and what we can do to resolve it in a peaceful way first. My son is going to be one of those that, if we are in conflict, he could be deployed. And I think about that. And I think about all of the young kids that are in there. So definitely a peaceful resolution would be first and the best if we can do that.
How would you handle the China weather balloon or whatever it's called that was flying over a country?
Well, I think that they allowed that thing to go way too far. When we have something that's invading they let that travel all the way across the country.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to bring up. You mean we couldn't find this thing coming across the ocean before it got here? Kind of remind me of Pearl Harbor, a whole squadron of Japanese fighter pilots. We didn't know that they were around until they started attacking Pearl Harbor. Do you think there's some type of conspiracy going on with this country with them?
Honestly, we are the most powerful, the most capable militarily in the world. We are the superpower. We are the best country. You're telling me that we couldn't mobilize to get that balloon out of the sky before it traveled and surveilled our entire country? I don't buy that. I don't have access to the top secret or classified information or whatever that they do, but looking at it, from our perspective and what we saw happen and what people are talking about, I thought that was ridiculous. It's amazing.
Let's talk about the Second Amendment a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading, and what makes our country one of the most powerful countries in the world is because of her Second Amendment. Countries don't want to invade our country because they know that almost every household has a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you protect the Second Amendment from being eliminated in this country? Because there's a lot of people trying to eliminate the Second Amendment. And that's the right to bear arms. If anybody that don't know what the Second Amendment is, how would you preserve and protect the Second Amendment? The one of the single most things that are keeping countries from invading our country is the Second Amendment. So how would you protect that?
I would not vote for any of this new gun legislation that they're trying to push. These bans and these AR, 30 round magazines, all these things that they're trying to push. I would not vote for any of them. I would vote to protect the Second Amendment always. I'm in favor of when you have a CCW in one state that it's good for all 50 states. I'm a CCW holder and I carry a weapon at all times. And I believe in that right. And it is not to be infringed. And to all the gun owners out there, I will always defend and protect that Second Amendment right. I will not vote for these bans. And the more that they try and control and they want to chip away at it. And they have been doing it for quite some time. They do a little bit here, a little bit there, and bit by bit, they're chipping away at the Second Amendment. I won't go for any of it.
So what do you say about these bleeding hearts that talk about guns in schools, shooting up kids, guns at malls, shooting up the shoppers, and mental disabled people or mental challenged people that have weapons? What would you say to all of that?
As far as the schools go, long time ago, they could have put 1 or 2 armed guards at every single school across this nation. Why that hasn't been done, I don't know. How about some of our federal dollars going towards that effort? I bet a lot of these school shootings, maybe none of them ever would have happened. You have veterans, you have parents, maybe they're retired. They could do these jobs. They would want to do these jobs. You put people who are armed at every school, we wouldn't have these problems.
Pahrump Judge Michelle Fury, when she was in the legislature, she proposed a bill called Campus Carry, giving teachers the right to carry. It was based on a CCW holder that couldn't carry her weapon on the university because of their gun rules, their free zone rules. And this same person that was a CCW holder was eventually raped on campus. And she was saying if she had her CCW and she had her weapon and she was able to carry it on campus, she wouldn't have got raped. And that's how the Campus Carry bill came in. Do you think that universities and colleges across the country, CCW holders should be able to carry their weapon on campus?
I was just talking to a teacher here about that very subject the other day, just a few days ago. She has her CCW and she can't carry her gun into the school, a high school, local high school here. And I believe if a teacher is trained, they have a CCW and they want to be able to carry their weapon on campus, they should be allowed. That is their right under the Second Amendment. How many school shooters would have been stopped if these teachers, the ones who wanted to, were armed? They're within the school. There's a lot of brave people. There's a lot of people that are ready, willing, and able. And if they are, let them. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, homelessness has been one of the top priorities in this country for many, many years. And it comes on the chopping block every single time that's some of the speeches that candidates talk about. They talk about homelessness. I just got back from Jamaica a couple days ago, and there's homeless down in Jamaica as well. You believe that? All that mangoes and coconuts right there, and they still have homeless people down there. Instead of talking about homelessness, As a senator, what would you do to combat the homeless population? I'm not talking about the people that want to be homeless. I'm talking about the people. Well, I guess there's two parts. People that want to be homeless probably really don't want to be homeless because of mental illness is forcing them to be homeless, and the people that don't have the mental illness but they are homeless because they don't have money to support themselves. What would you do to combat this homeless population that we have in this country that's been going on for years and years and years and years, and all we do is talk about it, talk about it, talk about it? As a U.S. Senator, what would you do to combat the homeless population?
Well, talking about that, you probably have heard me say this. A couple of months ago, the post office that I go through has this same homeless guy that has sat there for years. And he holds up his sign and all of that. And one day I had brought him some lunch and I sat down on the curb next to him and talked with him. And
were there cameras on you?
No.
Because that's when politicians like to talk to homeless.
No.
When there are cameras on them.
No, I have.
Not cynical at all.
I always have said hi to him. I've known his name. I've brought him food before. And
what's his name?
Is it Bill?
Bill?
It's Bill, yeah. And
you know Bill? Homeless Bill? No.
I probably represent several of them.
So anyway, I've seen him for years and he comes to the same place. And so I just sat down and talked to him one day and I told him, a couple months ago, I said, hey, I'm running for office. And so we kind of had that chat and I said, as a homeless person, do you want to be out here? And he said, no. And I said, what's the percentage of people that you think want to be out here versus don't want to be? And he gave me about a 60-40 ratio, that 40% want to be out there. And I said, okay, from your perspective, what's your solution for this? Mm-hmm. And he had a very elaborate answer. And he must have thought about this for a long time, but he said, I look around the city and I see these buildings that are empty. And he said, why can't there be a 1-year program put in place for homeless people where you can get job skills and mental health care and rehab care, clothes, all of these things. Get your ID. A lot of them don't have an ID. Get your ID. Get yourself in a place where you can get a job. Get back on your feet. And I asked him, I said, how long? What does that look like time-wise? And he gave me a year, maybe a little more for certain instances or certain people. I said, okay. So if you look at those programs, that is a redirection of dollars, dollars that are misused or appropriated out of our country that we could use here. Like I was talking about that $200 million for those gender studies outside.
Or like the trillions of billions we sent to Iran.
Right. That and the 80 billion that we are giving to the IRS to hire 87,000 agents to come after all of us.
Which I still haven't received my refund yet, and we filed in
goodness.
February.
Something's wrong. You got to call.
I did, and they said it's still under review.
Oh my goodness!
I can't even speak to anybody, IRS.
That's terrible. But it's just, again, it goes back to priority. It goes to, once you have that priority, where those dollars are going to go. What can be used best for our people and for our country?
Climate change.
Yes.
Is there global warming?
I have read so many pieces written by experts, and I've read on both sides of, people that are pro, think this is a huge crisis, and then also people that don't think that it is. And that all of these billions and billions of dollars that we're spending to fight climate crisis, they say in 100 years, the temperature would change maybe 2 degrees, if that. So we're putting all of this money and billions of dollars, and they've got this climate agenda. And it's what we were talking about before. They want everyone to go to electric vehicles, and they want to ultimately control every move you make. And I was reading this article, well, multiple articles, because once I see something, I'll go research a bunch. Because what you read on the internet is, one side slanted one way, one side is slanted the other way. So you kind of want to read.
Kind of like CNN and
Yeah.
Fox News.
Yeah, people will watch, all kinds of different news programs to maybe somewhere come in the middle. But trees will, one tree, a mature tree, will soak up
Carbon dioxide.
Yes, 48 pounds of it per year.
And give us oxygen. So we need trees to live.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that.
Well, no, but if you look at how much, energy related carbon emissions are going out and how much trees absorb, once they absorb this, it's held in the tree until the tree is absolutely destroyed, and by fire, let's say. Even though you cut that tree down or you cut it up to build a house or whatever, it's still in there until it's completely destroyed. So we've got 13, I wrote this down because I wanted to remember this number.
We finally got her to go to her notes now.
Yeah.
This whole interview, she hasn't went to her notes.
Well,
Only 2 hours in.
But these numbers are so 48 pounds for one tree, right? We have 228 billion trees that are absorbing all of this. They're absorbing most of these emissions. 11 trillion pounds are absorbed, and there's 13 trillion pounds that are emitted. So there's organizations and people out there that are planting trees, millions and millions of trees every year, because we cut down, millions. But they're planting more and more trees, and they want to get up, to a trillion trees. That is their answer to fighting climate. The more trees we have, and what a inexpensive way to do that and use those resources. So I think that there's other ways to do that. I think that they are creating and calling this a crisis because they want to push a certain agenda. And that agenda includes control over the people. I'm not okay with that.
Okay. We've touched on a lot of things in the past 2 hours here. And the reason why this show went so lengthy is because I wanted people to know exactly how you think on these different questions. And one of the problems they say we have in the state is a water problem. Although I had Las Vegas Valley Water head honcho on here talking about it, and he says there is no water problem here in the state of Nevada. Is there a water problem here, and if there is, how would you willing to take the salt water from California and convert that into drinkable water? I mean, what's your position on the water crisis in the state?
California needs to take their own salt water and have some desalinization program. They need to do their own, because California is a huge taker of the water here, right? So according to the Southern Nevada Water Authority, we are actually operating in a surplus. So what we take from the lake and use, we recycle that water and put all of that back and then some. So Nevada conserves the most out of all the states that are there. I believe California consumes the most. And the states got together and tried to, come up with an agreement of reallocation of water, because we've been growing like crazy. California wouldn't come to the table, so of course the feds have to step in. So in my position, representing Nevada, that would be something very near and dear to my heart, and something super important as we grow as a state. That's something very important that we always need to keep our eye on and do the best for our state. And when one state is not conserving and they're not doing their part, they need to be held accountable, like California.
Recently, there was a a news footage. I believe Fox 5, a local station, had a news footage on extraterrestrial beings landed here or crashing here in southern Nevada. One guy said it 8-9 foot creature-like person was in his backyard. Do you think we're here alone, or do you think that there is another life form in this universe we live in?
You know, they say,
without sounding like a crazy person,
they say, believe nothing of what you read and only half of what you see.
Okay.
So, you know, I know the government has certain top secret programs going on, and eventually we find out about them, and you know, as technology progresses. As far as that goes, whenever it comes time that there is something like that, we will all see it. Right now, I have not seen or experienced anything like what these people have reported. So I don't have that personal knowledge. I've not seen that. So, you know, and I know these people they take videos they've seen and they believe. And I'm not going to, you know, refute what they say. They saw it, they videoed it, and, you know, everyone has their own perspective on that.
Tim, you have anything?
Aliens?
No.
I mean, I have some clients that one of them's at this table.
One of them was at this table. Is there anything you want to?
I think we've run the gambit. I think you've answered all the questions I have.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to put forth that we haven't covered?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot.
We did cover.
There could still be more. There's still, you know, people have all kinds of concerns. They have concerns about, you know, the seniors that I talk to. I talk to a lot of seniors, and they have concerns over their health care and the health care in Nevada. That I was meeting with a gal the other day in the medical industry, and there's definitely work to be done there. There's a lot of things that people struggle with, and as I travel around the state more and more, I see this, and I hear from these people, and I want to hear all of that. I want to learn, and I want to know what their concerns are and what we need to work on.
Okay. Well, we'd like to thank you for coming on the program. Mark is going to zoom in on you, and you could, whatever you want to say, get people to come and vote for you. You have a fundraiser coming up, right? July 28th at BJ's over there in Centennial Parkway. Yeah,
it's at BJ's, right across from FireRock there, and it's next Friday, July 28th from 6 to 8. So come on out for that, and come on out and say hi. I encourage all voters to call me, email me, send me a message on social media. All of my contact information, you can call my cell phone directly and talk to me. It's all on my website at phillipsfornevada.com, and that's the number 4. And I've had tons of people reach out to me and call me and tell me their concerns. I am willing to talk to everybody. And I would say, Nevada, look at what we have been doing over the past election cycles. Look at whether we're winning. We're not winning. We are losing. We need to do something different. I would encourage you to vet your candidates, get involved, donate. These campaigns are so expensive. And I certainly am not one that is able to fund this campaign. But I'm willing to work for you. I'm willing to represent you. I'm willing to do the hard things and go to Washington and be your advocate and do the best that I can for you and for Nevada. And I need your help. So I would say get out there, organize meet and greets, volunteer, register to vote if you're not, and get into politics. Politics isn't the greatest subject. A lot of people don't want to talk about it because it's controversial. And I understand that. But if we are going to save our country, if we are going to send the right person to Washington to represent you, look at who the true Nevadan is. Look at the person who's going to fight for you. Look at the person who is completely vested in this state. I will not disappoint you. I will always defend you, advocate for you, represent you. Vote for me, please. Stephanie Phillips for United States Senate.
Your contact information, please.
PhillipsForNevada.com is my website, the number 4. My email is Phillips@PhillipsForNevada.com. And my phone number, 702-339-6436. Call me.
Well, thank you, Ms. Phillips, for coming on the program. Good luck in your race. Thank you, Tim. Folks, that's Stephanie Phillips. She's running for United States Senator. I think we covered a lot of subject matters in this 2-hour program, and we're just trying to get Nevadans to better understand this candidate and know exactly where she's coming from. That way you can make an educated decision when you go to the voting booth in June of 2024. I think this candidate is superb, and I've been doing this for a very long time, and I see things that people don't see, and I see a lot in this candidate. In my perspective, I think, and some people say that's probably far-fetched. I mean, they said the same thing about Barack Obama, but he did 2 terms as president of the United States. And I think this candidate has presidential criteria that can be way past United States Senate, is my perspective. And the more and more you learn about this candidate, the more and more you too will agree with my assessment of this candidate. But all you got to do is learn about this candidate. You Republicans out there, just pay attention who you pushing through the primary. You don't want to push a candidate out there that has lost several races. You don't want to push a candidate out here that just came into our state. You don't want to push a candidate out there because you are sympathetic to that candidate. You want to push a candidate out there that is a real Nevadan that believe in your crisis, that will go to Washington, D.C. and fight for you. And that's exactly what we need. We need somebody that's actually going to fight for us. When are we going to wake up and find that candidate and push that candidate that's going to fight for us? This is Steve Sampson and Timothy Treffinger with Veterans in Politics. Go to the voting booth and vote for Stephanie L. Phillips for United States Senate. Thank you so much.